Welcome back to StoryPath English, my friends. I am so truly happy to see you here again. Please, find a very comfortable place to sit. Lean back and let your shoulders drop. Take a deep, slow breath. Imagine we are sitting together once more by our warm, glowing campfire. Tonight, the air around us feels different. It is not the thin, cold air of the mountains, nor the humid air of the jungle. It is a dry, heavy heat. It smells of dust, ancient spices, and sun-baked rock. If you listen closely, you can hear the soft desert wind whistling through narrow canyons. The stars above us are huge and bright, shining over a landscape of endless sand and giant, jagged mountains. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a city that was lost to the Western world for over 1,000 years. It is a story about a people who turned a harsh, bone-dry desert into a garden of paradise. It is a story of a city that was not built times on times the mountains, but carved directly times into times them. This is the secret of Petra, the rose-red city of the desert. To begin our journey, we must travel back to the year 1812. Imagine a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. He is a man of great courage and many secrets. He has spent years learning the Arabic language and the customs of the desert. He has dyed his skin and changed his clothes to look like a local traveler. He calls himself Sheikh Ibrahim. Why? Because at this time, the ancient city of Petra is a sacred secret. The local Bedouin people protect it fiercely. They do not want outsiders to find it. But Johann has heard whispers of a magnificent city hidden deep inside a mountain of stone. One hot morning, Johann convinces a guide to take him to a place called the Valley of Moses. They enter a place called the Sick. Imagine a narrow, winding canyon. The walls of rock on either side of you rise up 200 feet into the air. They are so close together that in some places you can touch both sides at the same time. It is dark and cool inside the canyon, protected from the burning desert sun. You walk for over a mile through this twisting path. Your heart is beating fast. You feel small, like an ant walking through a crack in the earth. Suddenly, you reach the end of the dark canyon. You step out into the bright sunlight, and you stop. You forget to breathe. There, carved directly into the face of a giant pink mountain, is a building so beautiful it looks like it was made by angels. It is called the Treasury. It has tall columns, beautiful statues, and perfect lines. But it is not a building made of bricks. It is a sculpture the size of a palace, cut from the living rock. The stone is a shimmering shade of rose, orange, and deep red. In that moment, Johann realized the legends were true. He had found the lost capital of a forgotten empire. How would you feel if you were the first person in 1,000 years to see a secret like that? Would you feel like a time traveler? This was the rediscovery of Petra. But who were the people who could create such a wonder in the middle of a wasteland? They were called the Nabateans. Originally, they were not architects or kings. They were simple nomads, Bedouins, who traveled with camels and tents. They knew the desert better than anyone. They knew how to survive where others died. But around 2,000 years ago, they decided to stop moving. They chose this hidden valley as their home. But they had a massive problem. Petra is a desert. It almost never rains. There are no rivers. How do you build a city for 30,000 people in a place with no water? The Nabateans became masters of the invisible. They were the greatest water engineers of the ancient world. They carved miles of stone channels into the canyon walls. They built giant underground tanks called cisterns to catch every single drop of rain that fell. They were so smart that they even built dams to stop flash floods. When a sudden storm hit the mountains, the water would come roaring through the canyons like a wall of death. The Nabateans learned how to catch that energy and store it. Because they had water, they could grow gardens. They had fountains. They had green trees in the middle of the red dust. They turned the impossible into reality. My friends, think about that. They didn't have modern pipes or electricity. They only had their minds and their hands. They show us that with enough intelligence, we can make the desert bloom. But Petra was not just a place of water. It was a place of incredible wealth. Imagine the incense road. Long ago, things like frankincense and myrrh, sweet-smelling resins used in temples and palaces, were worth more than gold. To get these treasures from the south to the great cities of Rome and Greece, travelers had to cross the dangerous desert. Petra was the perfect stopping point. It was hidden, it was safe, and it had plenty of water. The Nabateans became the middlemen of the ancient world. They became incredibly rich, and with that wealth, they began to show off. They didn't just want houses, they wanted monuments. But because they lived in a world of stone, they decided to carve their city. Imagine an artist standing at the top of a cliff. He doesn't start at the bottom, he starts at the very top. He carves the roof first, then the columns, then the floor. If he makes one mistake, the whole building is ruined. There is no way to fix it. They carved over 800 tombs and temples into the rock. They mixed styles from all over the world, Greek columns, Egyptian symbols, and Roman arches. Petra was a melting pot of cultures. It was a city that said to the world, "We are rich, we are smart, and we will never be forgotten." When you walk through Petra, the colors are like a dream. The local people call it the Rose-Red City, but it is more than that. The stone has veins of purple, blue, yellow, and white. It looks like a silk dress made of rock. In the sunset, the whole city seems to glow as if it is on fire. It is a symphony of stone, but as our campfire tells us, every flame must eventually burn low. The golden age of Petra did not last forever. In the year 363, a massive earthquake shook the desert. Half of the city was destroyed. Then the world changed. The great trade routes began to move away from the desert and onto the Red Sea. Ships began to carry the incense and gold that used to travel on camels. Petra was no longer needed. By the year 700, the city was almost empty. The fountains stopped flowing. The gardens dried up. The wind began to blow sand into the grand doorways. The only people left were the local Bedouins, who lived in the caves and kept the city a secret to protect it from treasure hunters. For over 1,000 years, Petra was a ghost city. It was a legend that people in Europe thought was just a fairy tale. When we stand in the silence of Petra today, we are reminded of the power of persistence. The Nabateans were nomads who decided to build a dream in the hardest place on earth. They remind us that beauty can be found in the most hidden places if you are brave enough to look for it. They spoke to us through the mountain itself. They carved their names into the earth so that the wind could never blow them away. It teaches us that even when empires fall and trade routes change, the things we create with passion can survive the centuries. The Nabateans are gone, but their rose-red dream is still standing, proud and silent, in the heart of the desert. As we sit by our fire tonight, I want you to think about the desert in your own life. What are the hard places you are facing? What are the dreams you are trying to carve out of the rock? The story of Petra shows us that you can find water in the desert if you know how to look for it. It shows us that you can build something beautiful even when life is difficult. As you learn English, remember the carvers of Petra. They worked from the top down, 1 inch at a time, with patience and focus. Your journey is the same. Every new word, every new story is a small carving in the rock of your mind. One day, you will look back and see that you have built a monument of your own. The fire is burning low now, my friends. The red coals are glowing just like the stone of the treasury at sunset. I want to thank you for sitting with me and traveling across the sands of time tonight. I hope that tonight, when you close your eyes, you can imagine yourself walking through the dark canyon of the sick, feeling the cool stone walls, and stepping out into the brilliant rose-red light of the lost city. Tell me in the comments, if you could carve a monument to your life into a mountain, what would it look like? What symbols would you use? I love reading your ideas.